part of what I said. But as I said, data.world, we're a data collaboration platform. The nice thing is that gives us a fair amount of visibility into kind of what the data science community is doing and how they do their work. So in concert with talking to data science leaders in the industry, as well as collecting our own data from the industry itself, we've managed to assemble a few pragmatic lessons for building data collaboration. These are by no means meant to be exhaustive, but there are some of the things that we've found help people along the path to data collaboration. A little bit about who I am. I won't spend long here because I know we don't have much time. For those of you that remember Slashdot back in the day, that's kind of way back when I cut my teeth in the kind of the open source world, front-facing, and started community management before they really had a term for it. Went along the lines, helped a lot of people build open source communities, and then landed here, which isn't necessarily an open source community, but it's open data in a lot of ways, so definitely a lot of similarities. As I mentioned, we're a data collaboration platform, but in addition to that, Data.world is also a public benefit corporation and a certified B Corp. So this really allows us to kind of use data for good as a lever against necessarily making shareholders money. So we get to do a lot of really cool, some call it philanthropic work, some you could say just general data for social good, and all of those kinds of things. We work with a lot of governments and municipalities and NGOs to do some really fun things for the betterment of humanity rather than the betterment of somebody's pocketbook, which is really exciting and fun for me. One thing I want to touch on before we get into our pragmatic part is if you remember nothing from the rest of my presentation, I would like you to remember this. The pragmatic lessons are great. I'm sure you can find a dozen different lists out there of people that are saying the same thing, but the Data Practices Manifesto is something that we started last November. We had a Open Data Science Leadership Summit. We assembled a lot of the kind of visionary level folks in data science, semantics, data journalism, visualization, that are all captured on the platform. I can actually give that link to Claudius afterwards, and he can distribute it if people are interested, or I can just put it in the Slack, I guess. And but one of the things that we're most proud of that came out of that meeting was the Data Practices Manifesto. We realized that there was a lot of fragmentation in the industry at large, and so we really kind of work together to see, all right, what can we do to kind of herd all of the cats in the right direction, make sure the AI folks and the ML folks and the deep learning folks all kind of have at least a similar lexicon that they can work to talk to each other about. And so definitely check it out. It's at datapractices.org/manifesto. We also have are hosting the community principles on ethical data sharing that came out of the Data for Good exchange. A code of ethics for data scientists. And we feel that these two things are relatively complementary, and we've really enjoyed kind of building them and the community that goes around it. So, diving right into the pragmatic lessons. So these are in no particular order, but they're meant to be kind of a guide as to some quick things that people can start thinking about in how to really start utilizing data in a more effective way, especially when it relates to data teamwork. So the biggest thing for us, which is also one of the values in the data manifesto, is maximizing inclusion, right? So not just of people either, right? Suddenly people talk about diversity, and I get a lot of folks that kind of their eyes glaze over because they've been bombarded by a decade of HR people that want to talk about diversity in all the wrong ways. But the more you can kind of be inclusive, not just of the people that are collaborating, but of your inputs and your outputs. The more context that you can build around your data, the broader that you can start with your data before kind of narrowing it down to tell your story, the better. But also the more ways that you can find to output that data. Sharing data is hard. Now, whether you're going to share it via pretty pictures with Viz, or whether you have a very focused kind of tabular structure to some numbers that you're putting out, or whether you're telling a story with prose. It's really good. The more that you can kind of blend all of those together, the better off you're going to be. And of course, in no inclusion story would be complete without saying that it's always better to have a subject matter expert involved from the very beginning to help guide things and tell the story and craft that kind of narrative along the way. And I know that talking to data journalists, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir there. It's always better when you have an expert to interview as a part of your story. And then fostering experimentation. This is really important. A lot of times we get caught up in the very first story that we see in the data. We want to rush to that story and tell the story and then we're done. But having this kind of feedback loop, this iterative approach to your data, and encouraging your analysts and your data scientists and data engineers to really kind of play with the data. You find a story and tell that story, but use that story to ask more informed questions to go back and investigate it again. And there are a ton of people that can participate in data storytelling. Everybody from the hardcore data scientists all the way up to, I'll say decision makers or viz or anyone that's kind of telling the story from the top level. And they all have a part to play, and a lot of times their work can be concurrent. And so capturing that context as a part of your data work and the insights that are resultant can trigger other people and give them ideas to dig in and go further with them. So, definitely kind of keep going beyond that first story that you see or the first story that you tell. And of course, any time that you're working with data, it's always good to have a goal. A lot of times people will sit down with a massive spreadsheet or a huge graph database, and they will just kind of start poking around and let's filter and sort and kind of see what falls out. It's a good idea to maybe take a look at the shape of the data, maybe a little bit initially, but form a hypothesis or have a question that you want to ask of the data, something that's very focused. This helps you with not only the clarity of your approach and your thinking, but also the accountability. You'll know when have we reached the end of that particular story, and when can we say, all right, now it's time to go back to the beginning of this process and take this focus and direction in a new avenue of thinking. And of course, using canonical data sources. I always laugh because when I say don't email spreadsheets around to people, I either get one of two reactions. I get the person who laughs and says, of course not, who would still be emailing spreadsheets around? Or I get someone who decides to break down an open week because they're still emailing spreadsheets around, and it's awful. But the more that you can do decentralized work and make it portable, the better off you're going to be. And there are tons of tools out there that are helping people to do this. Not just us, we have one approach, but I like to tell people that there is a veritable cornucopia of tools that are going to help you make better data teamwork practices a reality. And then obviously the more that you can do to rope in that context, using linked data, so the example I like to use is very rooted in looking at, so you're looking at maybe some election results. There's an election tampering story or something like that. And it's always richer when you can bring in maybe some demographic info or some data from the US Census and talk about, what does it look like in these districts, these voting districts? Can we expand the story? Can we draw inferences? Can this data be made richer by having more context that's around it? And not just other data set context, but trying to capture the context of the water cooler discussions. In the days of emailing spreadsheets around, I would email a spreadsheet out and maybe John would email me back and say, what are columns A, C, and F? They make no sense. They're 3-letter columns and I have no idea what they mean. And I would answer that for him. Had I answered that in public with the data set right next to whatever I have to ask again, benefit discussion. So the more ways that you can kind of continually capture that context, the more efficient that you're going to be, and the more rich your engagements are going to end up being. And then, of course, practicing good scientists, or good science, even if you're not a scientist. is important, right? We all had high school biology class or a chemistry class, and they taught us the scientific method of how to observe, measure, and experiment and whatnot. And as much as you can, trying to take those lessons and incorporate them into how you approach data. Be very methodical, capture and document your work, and feed that back into what you're doing. And then obviously, the more you can document how you got someplace and share that documentation, other people will be able to replicate your work and move forward with it. And that brings me to document work in process. So good software engineers have been doing this for years. It is a requirement. It's considered an essential part of the process. But it's amazing how often data scientists will hand you a quote-unquote finished data set, and it will just be a piece of rectangular data. It has no context of how was this data gathered, how was it cleaned, how was it assembled, was it sliced, is this just a portion of a larger data set? What were the methodologies used either in gathering it or in the algorithmic approach to the cleaning and slicing of the data? So all of that context can be captured and should be captured, so that when you have the resulting piece of data that you share, now whether that's I wrote a news story and I'm sharing the data, we're starting to see a lot more of that. It tends to be much more impactful, and people tend to believe and relate to stories that come with the data, especially when they can dig in and draw their own conclusions, or maybe ask more informed questions of the original reporter, however that might work. But just having the data provenance and the ability to look at the algorithms in the code and understand, oh, look, there's bias, and here's what it looks like. Or maybe, wow, they did a really good job of being thorough and insightful. So the documentation and the process that goes along with it is really important. And again, I can't harp on this enough. I know I've mentioned several times, but continually building that context, the conversations that happen around data, this tribal wisdom that is accumulated as you work with data, questions and answers, or just sheer metadata like a data dictionary that explains what is this data that you're looking at, what do these columns mean, all of this stuff that you can do to kind of minimize the duplicative effort. There's a ton of tools, again, to help with this, depending on how you work with data, whether they're just something that you can have on your laptop, or whether this is something that is cloud-based that can work for large distributed teams. There are tons of options available. And building context is really important, especially for those that come after. And for those that come after, if you happen to be one of them, it's really important to find and understand the prior work. I like this quote that someone told me, that science is standing on the shoulders of ideas that you believe were arrived at with sound method, and challenging ideas you believe will reach with unsound method. It's really great that if you can take a look at how someone arrived at their conclusions and immediately see, oh, they really didn't consider all of the things that are available to them, I can do a better job. And maybe in the true spirit of open source, I can do a better job and contribute that back to the original author and say, hey, I thought this might be helpful, and I really enjoyed what you did, and I wanted to dig in and take part of it. So that's why your provenance is important. It's important to pass on all of your work. But as the person who's benefiting from that work, you can also push it the other direction. And encouraging tool agnosticism. I don't know how many times we have looked at a data science team of some sort, or just a bunch of data analysts or whoever, and they just end up with tool fatigue because mandate after mandate, maybe they get a new manager, maybe they acquire somebody and they decide that those they acquired were doing better than they were, and suddenly the whole team is forced to shift to a new tool. Like everybody's got Tableau, and then 6 months later, everybody's got to use Power BI for their business work. The more that you can do to centralize your data, especially with some of these new breed, best in breed tools, it just allows people to work in the tools they're comfortable with. Obviously, sometimes that's not a possibility. Sometimes you really do have to all use the same tools, but as much as possible, have a really and someone who is, a complete gunslinger in Python. Like each of those people can bring some really amazing outputs to the team, and the more that you can do to let them work with tools that they are already comfortable with, as you kind of evolve your data practices, the better off you're going to be. And then finally, consider and measure impact. Obviously, as data journalists, you're always looking for the big story, the important story, the thing that needs to be. So this may seem a little bit of a redundant statement, but it's important to prioritize data work with projects that have well-defined goals or well-defined output. It all goes back to that, taking a look at the data and making sure that we're asking the important questions. And once we arrive at the conclusions or answers to those questions, that we're using that to be informed. And the more what does it mean when I answer this question? What is the impact it's going to have? Can I measure that impact? Does it mean page views on a website? Does it mean dollars saved by City Hall? Does it mean what does it mean? There's always an impact of some sort in data work, and it's important to understand kind of what that is, so that that also can inform kind of not only your process, but what it is you're looking for, and then kind of allow you to be very introspective about kind of what constitutes success. So those are kind of the top 10 pragmatic lessons for data collaboration. I know it was very high level and very kind of a very high level overview, but I'm more than happy to dig in and answer questions. And I'm especially excited for Flavius and some of the other speakers and whatnot to talk about kind of how they've done some tactical work on the ground with some tools and what that means in practice. I think I'm just about at the end of my 20 minutes. So, Flavius, you want to field some questions?
Thanks so much. I'm sure there are plenty already. Did you want to perhaps, since you have the floor, pull the data journalism workspace on data.world so I can give a peek to our friends here?
Yeah, 1 second. I'll pull up the.
Essentially, we started as part of the work of bringing together your ideas, your data, or working with data, best practices, good practices that are not necessarily what the journalists have learned 10 years or 20 years ago. And data.world came as a sort of GitHub for data, and that was nonetheless manageable for non-tech people. And I'm a non-tech person. I'm a non-nothing pretty much. And so the idea of as Patrick mentioned in the broad terms of having the data out there so people can walk the same steps that you did versus having a Dropbox link, or a link to the open data from the government, I think has been a learning experience. And we did that with the example here is the data on refugees that the US resettled in 2016 fiscal year up to now and some time before. And so that gives you a nice idea, and we'll send the link, but essentially we had to put the data set from my Dropbox into data.world, and that forced me to qualify and to describe what was that data. Including some of the data that I had tortured, and it was just a CSV file where I was like, January 3rd, State Department, Syrian, 2018 or something like that. But here, if you click on data, on the data set, Patrick, for the refugees we settled in the US, and show the data dictionary, maybe, or sorry, you can go directly to the data dictionary. When you plug the data on, again, none of that is technical. But when you plug the data on data.world, you don't have to, but it's good practice, so you cannot describe what the data is. If there is random columns that would remain as random columns with random names on your CSV and your Dropbox file, or on the State Department the source, you can here describe what they are. So people, it's an effort of transparency and reproducibility, so people can go there and can more easily reproduce the result that you have and the experiments that you've done and the cleaning of the data that you've done to arrive to your visualization. And if you come to the visualization, Patrick, perhaps, the insights, right? And then you can do actually, we give data.world more credit than Patrick did, because there are simple charts that you can do right away. This one, Patrick, I did it on the state who took the most refugees. I did it right on straight on data.world. So it will do simple visualizations. As Patrick mentioned, I think their interest is not to compete with Tableau or with other visualization tools we're going to hear from about in a few minutes, but really sort of to allow you to then use your visualization that you can. And here I did natively this graph, but here it's a visualization that I messaged my data on Google Sheets, and I took the visualization, the same data that I stored, hopefully, and then I plug the visualization here, and you can plug Tableau, etc. So again, the idea is not really one shot, really just to have that transparency and reproducibility, and sort of giving as much details about, it was midnight, 2 a.m., and you started torturing that data. Even myself, when I had to put it on data.world, I didn't remember what that freaking sheet meant. Why is the states here? And so it forces you to go through those steps again, and therefore it helps. Yes.
So is this something where you're actually doing analysis on data.world and you have some sort of data flow language where your data is then flowing through your graph? Or is this something where you're saying, okay, I'm just going to document the stats and I'm going to go and write in some format. Okay, step one, I ran this R script. Step two, I ran it through this Python script.
This is the basics. Is essentially that's what it will do at its best, and at least from the perspective of journaling, it does provide that to provide the different version of the sheets that you've tortured. But then, in terms of the working on the data, that actually a point that Dan will illustrate that Patrick mentioned briefly. But you have the opportunity once on the platform, once your data is on the platform, to contextualize. And perhaps Dan, do you want to jump in and show how you cross-reference with other data sets?
I will, because actually I was going to add to the answer that he gave you. It's actually a little bit of both. Like, there's no R instance running here. There's no Python. You can put the scripts up there. You can describe what you did. But at the same time, there's so many different data sets that could be related. So so many geography and time. You've got right here refugees that are being resettled in the United States by state at a particular time. Well, there's some contextual data we might want to bring in. From the previous chart, California looks like it takes in the most refugees, but that's probably unfair since it's just a larger state. So if we wanted to normalize by population, we need to bring that data in. Instead of just going and doing it in Excel and re-uploading, I found another data set on data.
Do you want to show the data set from Dan, please, Patrick?
And then use there's a version of SQL running here that you can do the join, and it updates, it creates a new table in the view that you can build charts off of, and that bit of the methodology then is captured. This is especially useful if the data set needs to be updated periodically. That if someone updates the data source you're referencing, that automatically just flows through, which is in some cases very good.
The notebooks, like say Jupyter Notebook.
Nothing like that. As far, maybe someday, I guess.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned Jupyter Notebook. We have an integration that's about to go live that will allow you to push a button and launch your data into a live Heroku instance of Jupyter Notebook. So yes, that is absolutely something that's coming probably within the next week or two.
And you already lost like half the journalists in the room, Patrick, but I guess speaking in Latin.
Yeah, I mean, the nice part about it too is, we do offer a bunch of different integrations, but one of the nice things, you ask, can you do your analysis right on the platform? And the answer is, you can start your analysis on the platform. I'll bring this up because with all of the data sets that you have here, we understand it's a CSV or an Excel file, and all of those files are immediately queryable. If you have SQL or Sparkle, you can start writing your query right here. And especially if you just want to do a very simple, let's trim the data to, the first 100 rows, or we want only the data that is from the date range of 2016 to 2018. Like, we can do things like that and then either send somebody a URL to the results of that query, or we can open it in a third-party app like Tableau, if we want to do Viz, we can open it in Python or RStudio, or we can send it to a integration like Algorithmia if we want to start writing algorithms that are going to further process that data. And there's a whole host of tools that you can integrate with or export your data to, but you can start by writing queries if that's your preference, or you can pipe it right out into your kind of tool du jour. Whereas if you're a deep level, Jupyter Notebook person, you'll be able to push button right into the Jupyter Lab or a Heroku Jupyter Notebook, or just snag the data yourself and import it. So there are all kinds of options, and we really feel like Data.World is the hub where your data is supposed to live, and all of the various integrations and interactions are collected there. But in terms of you doing your work with your data science stack, we don't want to mess with that. We just want to enable you to do your work the way you want to do so that you don't have tool fatigue.
And a quick parenthesis is the caveat also, we use the free version, so we're not promoting any. I think as you make it more complex, you have more needs, but for our needs and for some basic journalism needs, I guess, you can say the free version works. We have another question.
Okay, you kind of just answered a little bit of my question, because I was just about to ask. I was like, so this is it's my understanding this is a business, a startup. What are you guys?
Yes,
okay.
Data.World is a venture-backed startup.
Okay.
We came out of stealth about 2 years ago, and yes, as Fabius was underscoring, we feel the good of humanity and sharing the results back with the community and then consume your work. We feel that use case should always be free. The only time that it gets into a paid model is if you want a lot of big data or you want a lot of private data. We give walled gardens to corporations that want to use these collaboration tools with their corporate data that they can't necessarily share in public, and they pay for that privilege. But for those people that are kind of working in the wild, you can have a couple of private data sets, but if you want more than that, then you can buy it's a pretty reasonable subscription, $20 a month or under, I'm not even sure. I have the enviable position of being the community guy, so I don't have to make the company any money. I just get to do all the free open data stuff, which is awesome.
And maybe Dan, do you want to tell us a bit how you now on that wall or somewhere where all our group members projects could be, and perhaps you want to tell us more about what you.
I mean, the alternative, the next best alternative to this tends to be GitHub. Like 538, all their stuff's on GitHub, and that's great. But it tends to be sometimes actively user hostile, especially if you don't like the command line, which is not a problem here.
Any question? Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, one.
I heard a lot in the beginning about SME, which I'm not particularly familiar with. Could you explain the concept of that?
I'm sorry, that's my fault. That's a subject matter expert. It's somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of the subject at hand and study. It's just my shorthand, and I usually don't colloquialize stuff too much, but I'm sorry, that's my fault.
We don't have many these days in Washington. Any other question? Or no? 1, 2, 3. Patrick, thank you so much. We are really sorry that you shared your great knowledge, but we cannot share our beer and our wine. So let us know next time you're in DC, because we owe you really a good drink. Thank you so much, Patrick. We'll be you should be in our space on Slack now, and I will be sharing your presentation and also contact information with our friends here. And yeah, I know you and I and Dan and others will see you on the platform very soon.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm Scuttle Monkey in your Slack channel. Is my Navi keyboard I've been carrying for many years. But if anyone has any questions, I'm always more than happy to talk shop. I'm just Patrick at Data.World. So thank you guys for having me, and I'll jump off the blue jeans and go jump over the YouTube screen.
Thank you so much, everyone. Ciao. All right, and without delays, we have our friend George. George is going to tell us how to.
Good time to stretch everyone. Let me just set up real quick and then I'll start.
Okay, just gonna wait for it. We had read spreadsheets that were on like version 13 and 14. We were sending back and forth to each other. We had now that had email. So we went through a problem with they were very specific. Joe.
Everybody okay? Not too hot. Good. Mr. Giordano.
All right.
Based on business intelligence tools, data visualization tools, especially for journalists who have not been exposed or data science school are trying to make a decision which tool to use. George is giving you the full guide.
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is George Soto. I joined this meetup about 5-6 meetups ago. I like the intersection of data and journalism. I like the challenge of taking raw data and analyzing it and telling stories that are hidden in your data. I can relate a lot of things that Patrick shared with us before in terms of making your data accessible, making data putting more context into it so people can understand without even having to send back and forth emails. So this will be my first talk in terms of if you get the right tool. I'll be reviewing. I'm actually in the process of reviewing several tools. My next talk will actually be on actual tools per se. This talk today will be about kind of like how do I approach this challenge of going from data to story and things that I look for. Some of them might apply to you. Some of them might be a little bit technical to you. Some of them might be too trivial to you. Again, this is more like a discussion. So feel free to tell me if this is applicable to you or this is completely, from another time, something like that. Hopefully not. So this talk basically is inspired by this Medium article that we wrote a couple of weeks ago. You can find more information there. I shared this on Slack and also online. There's a data engineer in the satellite communications company in Ireland called Fuse Network Systems. Our needs there were pretty technical. We had close to 1 million customers, and basically had to provide internet over satellite through the entire United States. Our main goal was basically to monitor all our devices, make sure they're operating properly, make sure our customers are happy. So it was very production intense, metric related, log related, stream related. I learned a lot from that experience. Back then, the business intelligence tools were not that popular, but at least the ones that we were looking for were not popular. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So let's start. First of all, like Patrick mentioned, it's, when you look at a data set, what do you really are looking at? Are you looking at data, or should you take a step back and ask yourself, what am I looking for? So the way that I approach going from data to stories, I need to ask myself, what am I looking for? So, what is the problem that I'm trying to address? What is the challenge I'm trying to meet? What is basically the story I'm trying to discover? And like Patrick was saying, there are so many tools out there, and nowadays people are trying, or people are always tools agnostic. That's a good philosophy. I strongly agree with that. And I like this quote that Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge. So to me, that means that when I look at a problem, I don't really look at what tool am I using, and how do I make my tool fit my challenge or my question, rather than what do I really want to look at. So I want to solve, let's say, world poverty or world hunger, whatever it is, however challenging it might be. Just start with simple questions that you can ask yourself. So then I usually do initial research. So in my initial research, I see, is it an existing problem? It is a new problem. If it's an existing problem or kind of problem that I can relate to, are there any lessons learned there that I can learn? Were there any best practices? Was some observation made? Was the analysis incomplete? How can I contribute? How can I take that piece of information and build on? That's for the case if it's an existing question or problem. If it's a new problem, basically that means you Googled it, you asked your colleagues, you asked whoever, you basically researched it a lot and you really couldn't find anything with a problem. Then that's when you really start, playing this detective work of finding the right data sources, analyzing it, and telling your story. It's always useful to ask for feedback before you go into this venture. You never know how simple it might be or how complicated it might be. I've run into challenges that I think might be very complicated, but it turned out to be simple, and also the other way around. I thought it would be very simple, but it turns out the data I was working with was not appropriate or tell the story that I was looking for, or questions I'm trying to answer. And absolutely, yeah. So it starts with curiosity, as I said. Don't be intimidated by any tool. Don't be intimidated that I don't know Python or I don't know R, things like that. It starts with curiosity. There are I've used a lot of tools, and the trend that I see now is going from, instead of having like an airplane cockpit with all the switches where you have to know exactly what you're doing, towards more of hey, tool, can you tell me what's really going on in my data? Can you visualize this for me? Can you do some pre-work for me, basically, that will take me sort of doing switches to kind of like autopilot. So it started with curiosity and you figuring out what did you like to explore. You break down your questions to what I call atoms, or as simple as possible questions. So like Flavius showed an analysis with Syrian refugees. If that's something that I'm looking at, I break it down to like this: what's the simplest question? For example, how many refugees came in a given year? What was their background? What were they before? Which states did they actually go to? It's as simple as possible. That's very important. So as you do this, the left side of the process, as you see it on the screen, I think that other people use as well. Or you can find some data sources that no one has any idea how this came for. You just find it on somebody's repository and nobody knows how really this came about. So that's like a question mark. And then you look at the pros and cons of each of these data sources, and most importantly, if you have access to these data sources. So once you kind of narrow down, like the business plan, what do you want to do, and this is like how you want to do it, you kind of formulated the problem. So I want to ask myself these questions. These are the available data sources. This is my problem I'm trying to solve. Any questions so far? Feel free to jump in. So a bit more engaging. So anybody has any experience with something like this, or maybe they've done something similar or completely different, feel free to share.
Just another aspect of collecting data or finding the right sources is also collecting your own data.
Mm-hmm.
One aspect for a lot of data scientists is web scraping, where you're basically just pulling all this information from somebody's website that isn't in the database and forming your own.
Exactly, yeah. Good point. That's called data collection. You just sound just like that. Awesome. So yeah, that's the first part. Know yourself, know what you're looking for, do some initial research, and formulate your problem. then once you have all this data at your disposal, how do you actually analyze it? How do you actually use it? How do you actually dig in and try to find your story? So there are a lot of tools out there. As I said, I won't be reviewing any of them today. I'll be sharing with you some criteria that I use to kind of review them, and hopefully in the next session I'll actually be reviewing and scoring them against this criteria. So I broke my criteria into two parts: the one that I call intangible parts and the one that I call technical. So the intangible parts are basically things like how much does it cost, what's the market share, is it popular or not, how fast can I go from data to story, how interactive it is, do I have to have any coding experience, and is there a community behind it, or is it just a product that somebody just updates every now and then? So I kind of gave you the content of each slide, but I'll go quickly over them. So when I look at the cost, I usually look at the cost, not of the trial version, because the trial version is like awesome. You look at it, wow, it's free. I can do so many things. Then after a month, you realize, what? I have to pay for this just to export it in the CSV, just to share the link. Doesn't make any sense. So I usually look at the cost of a tool, including all, if not all its features, at least the ones that I feel will pertain to me. So that's very important to kind of write it down in a cost analysis. And then another thing that I see is a lot of tools will charge you per user per month. That's important to know. If it's just you who is doing this analysis, that's good. But what if it's an organization? Like I'm working for an organization now, and we don't have one user; we have 200 users. So scalability is also important in terms of cost. Also over time. This is a monthly charge you're having. And then you might look at it and you might feel intimidated. Wait, you have to pay so much money per user. Well, that's one side of it. The other side of the coin is think of it. You don't use some kind of an analytics tool or visualization tool. That data silo. I'm sure if you're trying to combine them, or if you're trying to look for the process all these organizations or these departments, you'll find some sort there. So think of the risk of having data silos and being locked away, and only one or two people has access to data silos. And then this market segment. How popular is this tool? Who is using it? Is this what are the reviews? Can it handle? How much volume can it handle? Is this good for like few spreadsheets, or is it good for like few gigabytes of data? Is it good for data that's you just analyze it once and you're good, or is this good for ongoing data? You're updating your data sources every now and then. And in some cases, you might also be interested in like the rate of data that's coming. So think of like an Uber app, it's getting so many instant requests for that. So this kind of a tool, we need to be able to handle volume, variety, meaning different data sources or different data formats, and also the rate of data coming in. If you're building something that's more for production, meaning it should be able to support a lot of users, then you should definitely see online what other companies are using it. And if it's what I call production ready, meaning you test it, obviously there's no tool that has that's unlimited in features and bulletproof, but there are tools out there that basically are production ready and are already being used. And if they're not out there, then people usually build their own, and they either keep it in private or they end up sharing it with other people as an open source project. And then if you go down the path of production ready, you also have things like you have to worry about data engineering pipeline. How does my data fit into my analytics engine? What happens to bad records? What happens to missing fields? Things like that. And also performance is very important. So what happens if everybody's trying to access the tool and trying to analyze, hey, what's the correlation of this column with this column on millions of rows? So that's the second. People might be, might score this criteria high, might give a very high weight basically. For some other people, I don't care. I just want to do the result. Another criteria that I evaluate a business intelligence tool is what I call 0 to 60. So that's very simple. Like I have a data set right in front of me.
So how do you analyze the data with engineering pipeline?
This is more for my article. I've extended paragraph on it, but basically,
Like, do you just have like automated tests you run on different services you're planning on using, or like?
So when I mean pipeline, I mean usually a collection of tools. So let me find it for you. It's actually a pipeline. That's why I'm sure. All right. So a little bit. So what I mean by pipeline is, we'll talk about this later as well. You have your data sources, and depending on how fast your data is coming, or how what's the volume of your data, you might need some kind of a queuing system. And then once the data comes in, you won't be analyzing it immediately. It depends on your app if it's real time or not. So you will basically store them in some kind of a storage component. And then you'll be processing them, like heavily processing them. This is basically what you're trying to look for. And then you definitely want to serve them to other users, and also you want to visualize them. So this is on the Medium article, so you can look at it later at your own time. But when I mean pipeline, I mean a collection of tools that kind of does this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. That might be an overkill for this meetup, right? But let's say tomorrow we decide to build a website that gets data real time, and somebody, validates their source, and somehow we come up with like real time storage. Then we'll need something like that. Question. So yeah. So for most people, like 0 to 60 is like a very important metric. Meaning how fast can I go from an Excel sheet or from this data set that I just found to actually visualizing it and getting insights out of it. I've seen tools that do this like really quick, really fast, and I've seen tools that require a little bit of coding, a little bit of setup. Again, it depends on your preference. Another metric is for interactive. So by interactive, I mean, do you need a degree in a field to actually use this tool? Do you need like some kind of like heavy background, or is this just for everybody? Anybody can use it. And how interactive is it? Meaning, like I've seen tools that once you import your data, it kind of looks at it and it kind of formulates some questions that you might already have. So I remember this data set from like student admissions, and I remember this tool that just by importing it to it, you could basically see demographics of students. You could see based on their maybe background, where they're coming from, which schools they're applying to, which basically some basic questions that you might have out of your head, like out of the box. The tool itself created those visualizations for you and kind of gave you those insights. And not only that, but it actually prompted you some other questions that you might ask. And then another concept that I look for is API. So nowadays, a lot of data sources are available on the API. So an API is an application programming interface. It's the way the modern computers talk. So you might find a data source out there, but it's accessible over an API. So meaning your tool has to have the capability of making calls to a remote data source, getting data for maybe a given time period, and ingesting. And that I what's called accountability. So that means that think of the old days, like when you installed something, it said you need this much CPU, this much RAM, this much storage. So nowadays, most things run online in the cloud. That doesn't mean that you should ignore how much resource intense such a tool is, because at the end of the day, you will be picking up what's called time to build. So if the tool is really intense, just to do the simplest thing, maybe it's something that you don't want. Like simple things, should be simple. So if I want to analyze million records with a few columns, it should be simple. It shouldn't take heavy amounts of data processing. That's why I call it accountability. So you should monitor how heavy your application or business intelligence is. And then, people like community might be a big aspect. For myself, it is like I clearly have in my mind distinction between open source and proprietary, like the community versus a product. When you have a product, usually has to meet deadlines, as always, has to apply a given set of specifications. Once the product is out there, you kind of either wait for the next version or see how it's being accepted by the audience. An open source project is more involved. You have developers from all around the world. You have features that people are requesting, so you're actually shaping the tool itself. That's like an amazing feature. You look forward to the next cycle, meaning that if you propose something and it was accepted, you actually can see it in practice. So maybe if you have a way of visualizing your data or analyzing it and you suggested it that's not there in the tool, the open source community will basically develop it and will make it available for everyone. And of course, you have to look for like support in case something goes wrong with the tool later on or your data set, and things like that. So those are the intangible parts, that I look for. I have another part of just technical. This might be a little bit too much for you, so please let me know if I can answer any questions. So let's get technical. So by that I mean there was a research that was done by Forbes years ago that said 80% of the time that data scientists spend is actually spending collecting, cleaning, and organizing the data set. So I feel that modern tools should at least help you with that. So by that I mean cleaning and data organization. So ideally, if I was to purchase or develop, let's say, business intelligence tool, I would make it in a way that it would be able to recognize the structured data set. So, like when Patrick mentioned, like rows or columns, and he had some columns A and F without any context. That's not really useful for the tool. But let's say you have like a date column. The tool should be smart enough to figure that out. That's a date column. You have a column about maybe geographical points, like latitude, longitudes. Maybe you have a column about just numbers. Maybe you have a column just about comments and text, things like that. So the tool itself should identify those what I call data formats, and should advise you on any issues, or for example, if 90% of them are numbers, but only 10% of them is text, it should somehow advise you that this column is not really representative of numbers. Then you can have semi-structured or like your own format. You maybe want to parse your own fields. Like this is relevant to logs. So when you have, think of it like every time you visit a website, the web server behind the website generates an entry in its access log. If you want to do an analysis of how many people are visiting my website, where they're coming from, which resource on my website they're looking for, you might be able. You should be able to extract just those fields. You might not be interested in the other fields. And then if your data is just raw and unstructured, you're kind of left, with your background and your knowledge, basically trying your best, trying to see if there's any structure behind this noise data. And another important fact is, so that relates to this is data quality. And I think Patrick touched a little bit on this. So So by that I mean, how well do you describe your data? Do you give any context in it? Do you actually talk about the legend? Yeah, do you give it like a legend, like the description of like a data dictionary that provides information of, hey, this column means the number of refugees for this month. So Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, so he developed this 5-star development scheme. You can check it out online. It's basically a scheme that is used to validate data sources of how high quality it is. It goes all the way from 1 star, like think of it like PDF files. It's very hard to extract data out of it. Projects that I've seen usually are based on image processing. You can have so much valuable information in it just because somebody exported it in the PDF. It kind of made it almost useless. So that would have like a 1-star data quality. If you could have like a CSV random, cool, I can read it. I have no idea what it means. If you could have a little bit more context, what it actually means, maybe in a separate tab or in the columns themselves, that's maybe 2 stars. And it goes all the way to 5 stars where I consider like data.org, for example, where you have every column, what's the format, what does it mean, what's the source, and how do you access it. So you basically provide the whole context of your data source. So that's very important. And then another technical aspect that I look for in a business intelligence tool is data collection and data resiliency. So I would expect modern tools to be able to handle rich inputs or data connectors, like like Tableau, Power BI. So you should be able to ingest no matter how large they are. Text, XML, Excel. PDF is a little bit tricky. JSON is basically the modern language that computers use now to talk to each other. And pure JSON is the geographical version of it. So you can have, if you're working a lot with maps, you could have, like, for example, states, counties, or school districts, or a zip. Even though zips are not really pure shapes, think of it basically as regions in maps. So maybe your analysis is region-based or geographical-based. That you need to make sure that your tool can handle that. You might find an excellent data source that's behind an SQL database, like Salesforce or Oracle. This is usually the case for larger organizations. Or it could be like a modern NoSQL database like MongoDB. Your data could be somewhere online, like Amazon Web Services, or your data. Maybe you're trying to do something with social media. You're trying to see what are people tweeting about a specific person or a specific hashtag or a specific issue. That's a feature that many modern business intelligence tools offer. Maybe you have.
So you mentioned like data resiliency. So how would social media data sources not be unexpected, if that makes sense?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry if I'm like skipping.
Yeah, you're skipping a little bit ahead. So data resiliency doesn't necessarily have to do with social media, but I'll explain it. Or maybe you want to connect to public data sources like data.gov or World Bank. So by data resiliency here, I mean if you're ingesting data from, let's say, AWS or SQL or a flat file, and somehow you receive bad records. You're expecting a number, but you're getting something else. You're expecting 10 fields, but you're getting 20. You're expecting a specific format, but you're getting something completely different. So by data resiliency, I mean the tool should be able to recognize this is a bad record. If you want to store it in another storage or data repository for further analysis, maybe these are not really bad records. Maybe this is just something that the data source itself now is reporting as an additional column or feature.
How does it recognize that this is a bad field? I mean, it's one thing, right? If you're expecting that everything else is text, and then suddenly you get a binary blob or something, but short of something corrupted.
Yeah.
And,
think of it like you're expecting like just numbers, okay? And somehow the data source or the application behind the data source had like an overflow issue. So a small number just became like a gigantic number out of range. So you'd get like a very large positive or negative number. So I'm not sure if that would be a good record for you or make any sense.
So you want your tool to go and flag outliers for you?
I don't call them outliers. I would call them not unexpected is a word. I would call them erroneous records, and that is again up to you and up to your application. What does that mean? Erroneous could be I'm expecting a number, I'm getting a text, or I'm expecting a number, but I'm getting a negative decimal. But there are tools out there that basically you can figure, and they can absolutely flag out these bad records. Not only that, they can notify you about it, and they can save it for further analysis. Does that make sense?
It's surprised that you do this without
Yeah. And then, sorry.
Is it just if like the data type is wrong? So like if it's like a long int as opposed to like a regular int or whatever? Or is it like if your family size is 1,000 and you're expecting it to be like somewhere between like a 0 and like 10 or something?
Yeah, range or boundaries, they're usually on the application side. I'm not talking like on the format or the type of data. So you're expecting numbers, you're getting text, or you're expecting lat long, and you're getting lat long, but it's in double quotes, or lat is missing, you just have the long. And then you might have a lot of data coming in, like think of it like social media, for example. If you're tracking like a hot handle that. So your data is so bursty, and you might need a queuing mechanism of the data pipeline.
Just to be clear, you've gone through all these indicators and already reviewed these data tools for
Yeah, I
these
reviewed
things?
three so far. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And they're on your Medium page.
The tools, no, the
Reviews.
metrics I use are in Medium, and some of the tools are mentioned there. But
with just a little bit of command line. I'm not sure he's going to meet that challenge. He has to pay a lot of money if he doesn't.
well,
But
so that way I kind of give you different options. But basically my goal is looking at these metrics, what really applies to you, what's the right tool for it. You might care for just one metric out of 20 that I mentioned. Question is, what's the right tool for that?
Right. So one of the things that when we were evaluating a BI tool, a lot of these BI tools, they boast of having a lot of connectors,
Okay.
but it becomes really important for you to test the resiliency of these connectors as well,
Yes.
because a lot of them have, they run into timeout issues because when they're connecting, there are API limitations from the source from where you're importing the data from, and then you have to do multi-part imports, which becomes really complicated.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you know the sources in advance from where you're going to import from, you need to test those connectors if they're there, and if they're there, and how resilient they are.
Absolutely, yeah. So you kind of find the limitations of each connector is, right? Yeah. They won't be mentioned, by the way, in documentation or anywhere else. And another aspect that I look for, like a technical aspect I look for, is data storage and data wrangling. So at the end of the day, all this data has to be stored somewhere for further analysis. So you could store them in columns, meaning you can have like dates, like we said, text, numbers, or you could have just documents, which is like more like today's approach. So in documents, you have fields, you have key value pairs. So you can have think of it as a CSV or Excel row, but transpose. So you have column name, column value, column name, column value. So let's say meetup name, data journals, let's see, meetup number 16, presenter 1, presenter 2, George, attendees, things like that. So it's like a key value pair. many tools can handle missing fields. Many tools can handle introducing new fields if they're working with document-based. If you're working with column-based engines, let's say like Oracle or like SQL, basically, you have to in advance provision that extra column that's coming up. So if you know that your data source is introducing a new field, you have to go to the tool itself and say, I want a new column, I want to be on this type, and I'm expecting it to be of the same integers. If it's not integer, I'll get an error. But if your tool supports like document-based storage, and the more you can have 10 fields, the more you can have 11 or 12, or you can have missing fields. The tool is smart enough to detect that this is and then you definitely need some basic data wrangling. You want to convert some data types. Hey, this is not really text. This is just some numbers in double quotes. Or you want to extract subfields. Maybe you have a domain, the URL, and maybe you just want the domain name. Maybe you want to do external lookups. Like for example, if you're getting IPs, visiting your website, you actually want to map them on the map where they are. So you use an external lookup for that on another database that maps IP ranges to actual latitude and longitude in the world. Yeah, and one important thing to remember is that no one knows your data. No one knows your data better than. No tool knows your data better than you are actually using. So, there's no tool out there that can kind of guess what the field is or what does it really mean, or so usually tools offer you the capability to look at the data types, the format, and kind of guide the tool on how you want to store it, how do you want to convert it, versus letting it complete autopilot and let it figure it out on its own. You can, it's just you might run into risk of misrepresenting it. And another part that is important, for me at least, is search. So think about over time we've been collecting so many data sets, so much data, so much analysis that went into it. If tomorrow somebody asks you for something that you did 2 years ago, think about it. Will you be able to even find it? Will you even know where it is? Will you even know how you generated it? So search is very important. You want to make sure that as you're adding all these data sources and records in your data storage engine, you're very modern approaches are apply this hot and cold data pipeline. What that means is you have basically your data source, and then you have like a fork. So both that data set basically split into two. It goes into the searchable or hot pipeline, meaning it's immediately available for search. It's immediately available for analysis. It also goes back into what is called the cold data, which is I think of it like a big data storage engine that can hold massive amounts of data, but it's not really fast in answering the question. So if the more you wanted number of attendees that attended this event in DC for this time, they can do it, but it will take some time. It's not easy. That's more like the cold pipeline. The hot one is insert, let's say you keep one data of data set. I can say. All right. Then the actual analysis part is there. So the tool should be able to offer you this capability. So finding patterns, looking at correlation, building a model that can describe your data with some level of accuracy. That's always going to be the case. So they should definitely help you going from like data to information and from unstructured to structured data. And the goal, remember who started with the question, the goal is always towards the answer. So these are just intermediate steps that tools offer. So if I want to summarize the whole process, it's you start with a question, you do some data wrangling, you do your exploration or analysis, you draw your conclusion, you can share them with other people. This generally creates more questions, so you start this loop again until you find other answers. And then modern tools, absolutely, they can offer like look at time series, like temporal analysis, how things are looking over time. You can look at location-based analysis. Give me, let's look at, for example, just this state or this country, this region, we can look at keywords, so like hashtags. We can look at description in a large text, or think of it like a cover book. And if you want to somehow summarize the book, how you do the pure text. Many of them offer some basic statistical analysis. If you want something more advanced, usually a basic machine learning component, meaning you have your time series, for example. They have a process that runs a machine learning job and looks for anomalies. So what that does is, in the beginning, has no data, no idea about your data, or what's the model behind your data, how is this data generated. So it's very unknown, like it doesn't really know the model. And as your data progresses, it comes closer and closer to your data. And then over time, once it sees something that's outside that model, it will flag it for you as an anomaly, something sticking out. And yeah, the last part. So many tools, they offer you the basic ones. They offer you basic options like line, pie charts, data tables, heat maps, meaning the color changes based on the intensity or the size of your metric. In place, if your data is geographically contextualized or where, then it can definitely be placed on a map. If it's a time series, then you can definitely plot them over time. If it's just two random variables, or you can plot them against each other. That's what it's called, a scatter plot. You can have tree maps in kind of like hierarchy. You can have like an organizational chart, like the CEO, HR, IT, different departments, and then different employees. You can have a word cloud, like if you ran, let's say, my speech through a word cloud analysis, which word came up the most? I'm curious about that. So that's like a word cloud. And which one came second, which one came third. And also, some of them offer custom visualization libraries. So hopefully we'll get to see this in our next talk. If this didn't really mean anything to you, I hope this next slide means something, because it's related to data storytelling. So the goal is, how do you go from questions to answers, right? So so that revolves around data, visuals or visualizations, and narrative. So if you combine your data, just raw data, think about it, the narrative, then you kind of telling what is really happening. If you combine your data with visualization, this is my data set, this is my visualization, you're kind of looking for outliers, but you're not really telling what's going on. And then if you're combining the visualization with the narrative, no data at all, then you're kind of engaging people to do something. Think of it like the Washington Post article. No data there, just visualization and a narrative. So when you combine all three, though, the goal is the data itself. Then you're actually engaging people to make decisions or changing something, take an action. Those are key ingredients, I believe, in data. So, question. All right.
What's your favorite tool?
There we go.
That is coming up next time.
So to motivate us to come next time, give us a hint. I mean, you must have like 3 or 4.
Sure.
Like, it's Tableau the one true answer. It's the one true tool to rule them all.
No, so that's the thing. So I don't think there is one. These are metrics that people look for. These are metrics that I look for. This might not be what you look for. So my goal is not to give you a tool. My goal is like a weights. I want you to associate weights to these metrics. That's why in the end I have a survey. So in the end I have a survey of what really matters to you. And based on what matters to you, hopefully I'll be able to come up with a tool that fits your.
But okay, so for example, you may have a group particular problem that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And so for me, it would be informative if you said, okay, here's a problem that you care about. Here are a selection of tools that you were interested in. And then, here's how you weighed the pros and cons of, say, 2 or 3 tools, after you implement it. I don't have to see everything under the sun, but, seeing, okay, I tried, Tableau and RStudio or something, and here are the pros and cons. RStudio, okay, bad idea, but, that bad example, but we don't.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, again, this is more of a discussion than me coming and telling that, hey, you should use this tool. Ideally, you should be data tool agnostic. Ideally, you should use the one that really looks at what you're trying to ask.
Let's say you using you have access to open government data.
Okay.
In that case, which one would be your first choice?
So,
cities data or
so yeah. So
Wait,
how is
juicy
this data
story.
accessible? Do I have to download it? Is there an API behind it? How do I get access to it? That would be my number one question. And based on that, there are tools that can access the data for you automatically, or there are tools that you have to download it yourself, you have to store it, and then you have to query it. So basically, it's like a tree that the more questions you ask, the smaller the pool of available tools becomes. I don't have that tree with me today. Hopefully not next week.
I have free access to Tableau.
Okay.
Never used it. What are the pros and cons?
Okay. How did you get internet access to it? One of your colleagues recommended it?
No, through a membership that I have.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the beginning, I just thought, well, it's free. I'll sign up to it.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, what is this?
So you felt a little bit intimidated, like it needs a little bit of training. Like what was your initial
I haven't
reaction?
had time, honestly, to look at it. So I'm obviously much better than
Okay.
everyone else. But if you, I think you have some general.
Sure. Yeah. So
We're on the same page.
Something.
Not less than
It's got a very good drag and drop interface. You can drag a variable on one side, drag a variable on another side, and instantly see what you're working with.
Mhm.
It's good for very fast.
So it's user friendly.
Depending on how advanced.
that's a
Is
challenge.
it scriptable?
Um, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you
It's
can
not
have basic script. You can say, hey, I want the average of these 2 columns, and I want this in your column, but nothing advanced.
So is it targeted more towards BI people more so than people who particularly use R or Python or just either one thing?
No, if you use
What's its main strength? Just visualization.
visualization and some basic analysis. Like it has nice join feature. You can join different data sets. You can also get some data from social media. It has some basic features.
There's some pivot tables where you quickly.
Yeah.
So for non-technical people, it's actually easier to do pivot table in Tableau than to learn to do it itself. Some basic analysis like that for someone who is not going to be asked too much, like a World Bank analyst, for example. Tableau can be a solution, but there's a lot you can do actually with Google Sheets.
Absolutely.
There's tons of things you can do just as well as Tableau, and it's free.
Yes.
Google Studio, if anyone hasn't used it, is more similar to Tableau than Google Sheets.
Is
Yeah.
it free?
It's
It's free.
Oh, wow. What is, sorry?
Google Studio.
Yeah, I haven't explored that yet. I came recently through it. Like I saw it. It's a nice approach. I'm curious how it ranks against others.
Yeah, there's nothing so far, and a very small use case, modest use case, but there's nothing I couldn't do on Google Sheet that I believe don't do on Google Studio like on Google Sheet. I believe Google Studio is very good with when you have those live streams of data, you have dashboards, and that's really where it competes with that.
I think you can't really manipulate the numbers to make the visuals look like how you want to do. For example, it will order numbers by highest to lowest. Say that I wanted to really highlight this feature, you can. Or Tableau, you can.
Interesting.
But again, what do you both ask? What is the purpose of your
Right.
Exactly, absolutely. That's why I think it's challenging to provide a tool because every use case is so different.
But again, kind of point. So in Google Sheets, the data is stored within Google Sheets, within both Tableau and within Google Data Studio. You can have data stored someplace externally, and the data can be manipulated externally if using R or something else, whatever data analysis. But you're primarily using that to then so that data that's uploaded in real time, that it can be uploaded in a database that's external, and then the Tableau or the Data Studio will just visualize that database.
and it's only going to improve, I guess.
Google Sheets, for example, like where if you wanted somebody to quickly be able to update it or something, or have a real-time feed into it,
right?
Then you then use that as the input into something else that you want to do more analysis on.
Right.
I guess it's one way to
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, just want to piggyback on the last slide. Yeah, data story planning because George's slide here is more about high level introduction.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so if you want to look into some case studies, I highly recommend this book.
Okay.
By Cole.
Starting with awesome.
Yeah, and the author was working with Google people analytics team. Yeah. If you want to open up. And she showed some examples about how to make your presentation more compelling to your audience and how to target your audience. Some case studies about it. Yeah, I had some kind of different ideas about the tools. I think tools come and go, and there are better tools coming out.
Absolutely.
What's one thing that you took away from the book and you applied in your analysis?
Oh yeah, so there are some tricks you can use. See, and they have some before and after.
No, this is more on the visualization part.
Yeah.
Of how do you engage your audience? How do you pick the right theme? How do you pick the contrast? How do you pick the right chart maybe?
Yeah. So for example, don't use those colors, and you may want to change your chart into this. So it's very.
They show you what not to do. She was Google.
Oh yeah, she was
Google.
working.
Yeah.
This is a super novice question, but maybe somebody can point me in the right direction. Yeah. I'm thinking what I've heard mostly is from people, if you already have a data set that you're working with. But I'm thinking if you have a question and you want to think, can this story that I'm working on yield itself well to data or a data store or to data collection and data visualizations? How would you work in that direction if you're trying to kind of figure out which questions yield well to data collection and data stories? Would that be in that book, or would that be any tools that you guys recommend?
I don't
It's a question that you're interested in. I mean, it might be easier to go with something
vague.
If I may just respond to you or whatever what I've heard already so far. One of the best people to talk to would be Julia Erie. She's a journalist at Washington Times, and she presented last time, and her process was that she had to produce 2 stories a day, one to finish by the end of the day and another one for tomorrow. So she basically told us the sequence of events, how to get from the idea to data collection, how to do then proof the data with the domain expertise, people who are in the field, how to not misread the data or make a wrong conclusion, and then based on that produce a printable article. She is on the Slack channel. I think you could, if you join, you may try to reach out to her, and I think she will gladly help you.
I'm interested in your question about your interest as well.
Sorry, what was her name again?
She's Julie Airy, Airey.
And on the meetup page, you find her the last meetup presenter.
That's really good.
Did you have any specific?
I mean, at this, I think it would be hard for me to think about it on the spot. I knew that part of my thought was like, oh, maybe I could just see how people are working from the question. I suppose, because I think that right now we've been working from the data set, so it's assuming that you already have some kind of data set and you're working from there. But my thought was like, I mostly work from questions, and then I go to other, maybe then I find data and then put it together. But I'm never sure, like, if I want to go through the process of grabbing data or yield stuff to helping the story. So my thought was kind of working in a different direction.
How do you know it's a data-friendly story?
Basically.
And I agree with you.
There's no such thing, right? It's a trial and error, basically. As I said, it starts with a question. You try to find your research. You try to find some data sources. You're trying to see if they answer your questions. If they don't, you just continue to look. There's no go-to for this question, this data source. Google maybe? I don't know.
Like Eri was saying last the presentation that she likes to speak with the retired. She's talking if she investigating about school districts. She likes to speak with the retired school official who spend her time grinding the data, and she has time to do that. So then she would try and narrow and find that person who has both the time and the expertise and to navigate whether this data or data and the whole data.
Yeah, it's more like a detective work.
If you're willing to wait, maybe it's a government data FOIA request might be where.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And if they even have it.
So are you required to give the data in certain formats?
No, I mean, generally speaking, for FOIA requests, you have to provide the data. There's no requirement that you have to make the data easy for the person who FOIA'd it to analyze. So if I have a bunch of paper that I scanned, and like there's no no OCR or anything, just here, good luck. I've now complied with my FOIA request. I mean, but if it's something where it's something that I had no problem with releasing and be happy to release it, and just never had the time to do it, that's a different story.
But when I put my FOIA request, I usually ask for a specific format just because I know that stuff happens often. Like you'll get like snail mail or something else if you don't literally if you don't ask for specific formats. So sometimes I do actually ask for formats if that's possible. It might get back to me and say you don't have it like that, we can't do that, but I usually try.
We also use this platform. If you have a story that you want to tell, you have the data in a readable format, you can call for help or assistance from the data journalism group. And we will organize a group for you, a channel for you within Slack, and anyone who is interested to help would step in and, for example, scan the data read the data with help with OCR and return the data in the format. I mean, turn it into a more operable.
That's a good point. That the question you can feel free to ask them to the group confidentially, or because that's also some of the community work that we want to provide is having very smart data scientists to help us to navigate. So the boys is like, feel free to drop the question Slack or present the next one and say, hey guys, I'm interested in that question. I think that's maybe not data friendly. You didn't find much before you didn't produce much. What do you guys think? And we can help you to see if there is more.
Do you have any recommendations for tools for collecting data? Like if you're not analyzing pre-existing data sets, but say, I don't know, you like made a product and you're trying to analyze like user experience with the new product, or I don't know, like if you're collecting all new data, are there tools you recommend for that?
Just for pure data collection. There are tools, but usually they're a bit technical. So like web scraping or using APIs or
But is this for your own product? Like, I guess is the question. Is it something where you're like, okay, we made this cool new VR device, and we want to go and find out for our users, what do they think about it? Or are you getting, information coming back to the mothership from the device, and you're trying to diagnose, like other problems?
So a little bit of both. It's analyzing where are people looking within the experience, is the experience working as it should, but then also what did they think of the experience? So there would be like in theory a questionnaire or something at the end.
So there's services like user voice. I'm sure that there are others that for groups that specialize in surveying your customer base, and you might even hire somebody on staff or contract somebody to try that. But there it's more a question of saying, okay, what questions do you want answered?
Right.
And then getting the data back to reformat into multiple gas. Some companies, they go, like if it's early days, they'll come out and they'll give you like an Amazon gift certificate to try and respond to them or answer a few questions. So.
Very user case based, basically.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say here. That you might ask me what is my pick, but my pick is based on my need, right? So every need here is different. So the goal is to go from what you need to how I identify what you get the job done.
But part of it is also knowing what is the space of tools, right? If this, I'm not a journalist, so I don't do data journalism, but I am a scientist, and so I know that for like say in my realm, there are certain tools that I'm used to using, maybe just more that I'm cool about, and things that I'm not used to using, or things that I'm not used to.
Absolutely, there is a planet of tools out there, absolutely, but based on what you're looking for, some of them don't even make it to the next level. So my goal is you have this universe of tools out there, but it's like a magic ball, right? You ask 3 questions, I can identify, I can weave out 50% of them. 4 questions, I can weave out 75% of them. 5 questions, I can weave. Basically, with 8 questions, I should be able to come up with 0 or 1 or 2. Because maybe what you're looking for doesn't exist. Could be very well the case.
From non-technical, the very first question would be, is that user-friendly?
User-friendly, absolutely.
Is there a learning curve or no learning curve?
Absolutely.
And I think Tableau hit a relative sweet spot because you didn't need so much, you didn't need computing. Challenge is a bit,
Can you get simpler than that?
You can get simpler, but also there's alternative, open source alternative to Tableau that us non-tech can use to ask all these questions. Is it data friendly? We have access to government released open data. What do we do? Where now it could be Google Sheet, it could be Data Studio, it could be Tableau. And can you give us a bit of a taste of what
absolutely, yeah. So I'll be reviewing. Yeah, I'll be reviewing. I'm not sure if you want me to review Tableau, I'll be happy to. I'll be reviewing Tableau. I'll be reviewing a new tool that's available from Esri called Story Maps. I've had a first glance, and it's geared towards more journalists, people with who are trying to tell the story more with visuals and narrative. But think of it like data somebody else has. It's there, but you don't even get to see it. I'll also be reviewing the one tool that I'm using extensively. It's called Kibana Elasticsearch. I'll be reviewing another tool that is very, when I first came with it, when I first saw it, I was really impressed. It's called the IBM Watson. So IBM has a lot of capabilities. So there are tools out there based on I guess just take the survey in the end and basically you shape what you'd like me to review. How about that?
And we'll encourage you for the next session, which is more hands-on, to actually bring your data set or bring your data so you can really test drive the tools, because George will be here to essentially help you set up the tool and apply it to your data. So bring your use case, bring your data, and test it with and challenge George to help you understand better your data with the tools that he's reviewing.
Cool. 2 more slides. We're done. So related to data storytelling again. So what I've seen, or usually what I go with is top-down approach of keeping your audience existing knowledge. In this meetup, for example, we introduced each other in the beginning. We kind of gave a glance of what is our background, what do we look for. So it's when you try and tell a story, I guess, using data, it's important to keep your audience knowledge. So if this is like a completely non-technical audience, it's somehow technical, it's very technical, it's completely related to a given field. Is it just journalists? Is it just finance institution employees? You have to know your audience, basically. And also are curious and this is what's going on. And then you start descending, maybe breaking down by state, maybe breaking down by county, maybe breaking down by individuals. You start this, top-down approach. And I have an analogy here. Think of it like when you're landing and you see maybe just the clouds from your plane, but then as you land, you see actually the water, or if you're going to your favorite, vacation destination, or if you see actually the buildings, the people. The lower you go, the more insight you get. So this is one approach in storytelling. I'm sure there are many more. Maybe your book has many more similar to that. And then the important part is you've done this analysis, you draw some conclusions. What happens with that analysis? What happens with those conclusions? Do they just live in your computer? Do they live in your flash drive? Do they live online? Do they live in an article? Can you share it with somebody else? Can you share the raw data? Can you share your insight, your analysis? So that's very important. And a lot of tools offer this as an option. You can share the raw data. You can share just one visualization. You can share just the entire dashboard. You can share a filtered version of your dashboard. And you can save it in either many formats, or you can just, my favorite feature is you can just give a URL so anybody can host it on a website as a live dashboard. So like we talked about Tableau, Power BI, like Kibana, they all offer this feature. And this kind of ties with reciprocity, meaning you got access to these data sources to begin with. You did some analysis and you created an output. It would be beautiful if it's not proprietary, if you could share this with the rest of the world. So then somebody else can use your output as a data source. And this ties with data democratization. This democratization, which basically says that I have this source study. I think everybody has to an open data, and everybody should be able, the minimum effort, to get access to it. And I think this is the last slide on this topic. So then if you're really working with sensitive data, then you have to definitely keep in mind security, and you have to definitely keep in mind what is called data governance. So who owns the data set, what access do they have to? Maybe they have access to some columns of the entire data set, maybe another person have access to the
the data lifecycle.
So I use that output for another as a data source. So data is like energy. You get it, you use it, you transfer it into something else. That something else can be used as a source for another process.
And eventually you may discover that data, specifically if it happens to be personal information. It's salient data sets or otherwise.
Okay, so conclusion, last slide. So so there's a need to get answers from your data. Absolutely, that's the whole point of data storytelling. So I want to talk a little bit about this data democratization concept of securely and responsibly sharing access to the data. So ideally, I envision, and I've heard other people talk about it, when anybody has access to like a digital well, and everybody has a pocket and they can get their data and do their job. There's a lot of research being done on benefits of having a non-technical user getting access to this kind of rich data sets and having like a minimum effort approach. I'm looking forward to my next talk where we're reviewing some of these tools. I'm also asking for your input. there's a survey here in the end. I also shared it in Slack. There's like 6 questions. That's it. Based on those questions, based on your input, I'll be tailoring the tools I'm looking at. Given that the audience is a little bit broad, so the more responses I have, the better. And that's it.
Any questions more? Please. Go ahead.
Yeah, this one sort of goes out to specifically like the journalism side of things. I know in both data analysis and journalism, one of the biggest issues is confirmation bias, where we already have the supposed answer in our heads, and then we try to use our data. How do we identify that bias, like in an article or in our own work, and how do we prevent that from influencing?
Absolutely, this is a hot topic now. You might call it fake news, you might call it biased news, but it's a big issue. I think this challenge has been there from the beginning. For me, the solution is you validate it against many other data sources, not just one. So plurality. So you don't only hear one single voice. You only hear a diverse set of voices. And you want to validate that just because this person or this data source is saying that this is really what's happening in the state. How do I validate that? I have to ask at least 2 other data sources. So the more you validate against other data sources, the more you get the real story.
Or I can also comment as a scientist, as a researcher. If I, have an idea for how something's going to turn out, and my data actually seems to agree with that, then I seem to get very nervous. I start looking to go and see, where did I screw up? Did something go horribly wrong? So I'd say be suspicious. Always be suspicious, especially no one other than yourself. So.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and thanks for the presentation. I don't remember if you went through this because there was a lot of different layers, but when you're kind of selecting tools, looking at a community that uses the tool, right?
Yes.
A broad community that provides the chance that some questions have been already answered,
yep.
Or just the tools that we existed for a while. And again, you probably may have touched on that.
Yeah, the community aspect, absolutely. So this is usually the case in open source or the open source version of a commercial tool. So there are tools out there that have an open source model, but they have the commercial model, meaning they have extra features that they commercialize.
But this is even going, I'm having some trouble, so I can go to.
Yes. If you go to GitHub, for example, you can open an issue, you can ask a question, they have discussion forums.
Right, go into any generic.
Yeah, many tools have their own discussion forums. So where for example, you're having issues with how do I do this? And it's not really clear in the documentation. You can absolutely ask a question. You should get an answer the same day. I've done it.
Or hopefully somebody answered it a year ago.
Or somebody asked it a year ago, just by a simple search, you'll find what you're looking for.
When should you start be worrying about when was the last pull request? When you say, oh, this 2 months not really being nurtured by the community. 3 months there's not been updated or answer a question. 6 months, a year.
It's indefinite month. It's not in years. Like if you see, so GitHub is a repository that open source code lives, and you can open issues. You can ask enhancement requests. So if there's an issue, if there's a feature, for example, that's not there in the tool, but a lot of people need it, they upload it. So usually people try to implement it within months. Absolutely. That you can't really shape in a product. Like you can't tell Tableau, hey, tomorrow I want this new feature. I want violent feature, violent thoughts. I want some other block. That's a mistake.
Last question or
sorry, this was too technical, but hopefully the next talk, based on your feedback on the survey, I should get.
And there's wine and pizza left.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, before it wraps up, everybody goes. So there's another event happening tomorrow on data visualization. Actually, it's going to be on the alley. It's going to be near this in Fergie Bottom area. Anyway, so I'll be one of the presenters with my company, which is a new data visualization tool and platform. out of DC area. So I'm the founder, CEO, and developer of that platform. And you can hear both from my end. And I think I will be also presenting in this meetup later on. Keshif. Yes.
Yeah,
so
is going to present
later on.
In person.
Yeah, and if you have time tomorrow, there will be pizza and another also agency, design agency, who does work with. I mean, the audience will be more like nonprofits and non-technical audiences. And the tool I'm building is especially for the 0 to 6, non-technical audiences. The best practices embedded when you have the data. Like now we have the data work integration too. It's gonna.
Post it on the slide.
Yeah, I will. I'm preparing the material, everything.
What time
so, huh?
What time is it?
Oh, tomorrow, I believe 6, 7. It's the evening
Alley is
time.
from here, right? It's Verizon Alley.
Yes.
It's
yes.
to walk from here. It's 4 blocks.
Near the Foggy Bottom area. Yeah. So yeah, tomorrow if you have time, I'll be there, and I'll be on the Slack channel. I'll try to contribute to projects. Sorry, sometimes my schedule is crazy, and yeah, I'm looking forward to both coming more to this meetup as well.